Krystal, what are you taking a look at?
Well, guys, big news coming out of corporate America as executives publicly rage, cope, and beg as a union wave sweeps the nation. So these executives at Starbucks and at Amazon, they are spoiled, coddled babies. They've gotten their way at every turn for literally decades. They rigged the markets, they bought our political system, and they had a desperate, powerless workforce that was basically at their beck and call. But now, workers standing shoulder to shoulder are standing up to these decadent giants in ways we have never seen in our lifetimes. And they are making it impossible for the upper middle class customers of these two companies to look away from the abuse and exploitation of their workers, creating a potentially insurmountable force. All right, let's start with the latest at Starbucks and the epic meltdown of their founder, Howard Schultz. Now, the Starbucks union campaign has spread like wildfire since that very first store in Buffalo voted to unionize. Last week, 6 new stores held elections and workers voted yes in every single one of them. Starbucks Workers United has now gone 16 out of 17 for wins in these elections, and about 200 stores in 29 states have filed for union elections. 3 more votes are coming in just this week alone. Starbucks, though, they're not just losing elections. They are also losing battles with the body that governs those elections, too. The National Labor Relations Board just ruled that Starbucks illegally retaliated against 7 pro-union workers that they fired out of a store in Memphis, Tennessee. Unfortunately, the NLRB doesn't have a lot of teeth at this point, but they do have a new, bold general counsel who has said that she plans to use the powers of the office aggressively to have illegally fired workers quickly reinstated through federal court injunctions. So, how is Starbucks corporate handling all of these developments? Well, they are in total and complete freakout mode. They fired their CEO and brought back Starbucks founder and union buster extraordinaire Howard Schultz. They fired their union-busting general counsel whose legal strategies failed to stop the union campaign's momentum. And you know they're really panicked because Schultz immediately announced they were halting these stock buybacks that fatten the bank accounts of shareholders and of executives. In his first town hall, he really gave away the game, though, crying about how the company was being, quote, assaulted by union efforts.
Now, here's where it gets a little sensitive, because I've been coached a little bit, but I do want to talk about something pretty serious. We can't ignore what is happening in the country as it relates to companies throughout the country being assaulted in many ways by the threat of unionization.
Assaulted. But the real public meltdown was just triggered by a pro-union barista through their heroic efforts to push back on Schultz's lies in a forum for workers in the Long Beach area. 25-year-old Mads Hall repeatedly pressed Schultz on the distance between their rhetoric claiming, we're not against unions, and the reality of their illegal actions firing workers and being sanctioned by the NLRB. Schultz first tried to just shut the conversation down, saying, quote, we're not going to talk about that. Now, in a different time, that might have worked. I mean, imagine the courage it takes to go up against a billionaire CEO as just one young barista. But Mads did not back down. Here's what happened in their own words.
Me and 19 other partners had the opportunity to speak with Howard Schultz. He wanted to know what he could do to restore trust within the company. And I mentioned that we wanted honesty and transparency about the NLRB charges and what's happening to pro-union workers across the country. I was silenced and told that I wasn't allowed to talk about that. He then apologized on behalf of me to the entire room for bringing it up. Later on, when benefits were mentioned, I said that while our benefits were once leading in the industry, they are not anymore. In response, he said, if you hate Starbucks so much, why don't you work somewhere else?
Now, few things give me greater joy than watching Gen Z organize unions and expose corporate bullshit on TikTok. Unfortunately for Starbucks corporate, workers who hate their jobs, they are not going to quit anymore. They're going to organize. Now, this is exactly what Amazon Labor Union President Chris Moss has been preaching over on Staten Island, triggering a meltdown of a different sort from Amazon corporate. Their legal team has decided to go full stop the steal, whining in new court filings that the historic JFK 8 union election was rigged by the workers themselves and also by the National Labor Relations Board. New York Times reporter Karen Weiss, she got her hands on a copy of their complaint, which seeks to overturn the results of the election. In the filing, they mostly complain about some of the grassroots guerrilla tactics that ALU used to great effect. Things like offering workers weed, attending and disrupting captive audience meetings, tracking pro-union worker votes during a period when that's supposed to be impermissible. No one should be surprised that Amazon will exhaust every possible option in order to undo the shocking victory of these workers. But I gotta tell you, in a lot of ways, the ketchup is already out of the bottle. Another building on Staten Island will vote this month. 100 more buildings are interested in organizing. Every one of these efforts, you gotta remember, continues to be a massive uphill battle. But it is undeniable that a fuse has been lit. I am just looking forward to watching Bezos following the footsteps of Schultz, publicly melting down over the strength of the union effort and its assault on corporate America. Here's the big reason these execs are freaking, though. Normally, their war on workers is pretty quiet. It's almost invisible. The status quo is so thoroughly rigged that just maintaining the same trajectory amounts to a devastating class war against regular working people. These workers are truly shifting the consciousness of America in real time, inspiring courage in the working class, but also creating some awareness in the upper middle class folks who get their lattes at Starbucks and buy their everything at Amazon. Because make no mistake, upper class guilt can actually be a powerful force. Now, if you know one story in labor history, it is likely to be that of the horrific Triangle Shirtwaist Fire back in 1911. Over 146 workers, mostly women and girls, were killed in a factory turning out garments for the upper classes because their cruel bosses had locked the doors, preventing escape when the tinderbox of lint and fabric trimmings went up in flames. Some of these workers were burned alive. Some chose to instead leap to their death rather than endure the agony of those flames. It's an enduring tragedy that created such moral outrage that it created lasting labor protections that were enshrined in law. Now, even if you know this story, what you might not know is that even before the tragedy, ladies' garment workers had been organizing, even going so far as a general strike to demand better working conditions. Just take a look at this. At first, their plight garnered little attention, with next to no press coverage. But then, a couple of rich heiresses, Anne Morgan, daughter of J.P. Morgan, and Alva Vanderbilt Belmont, they got involved. Known as the Mink Brigade, the involvement of rich women helped to trigger press coverage. And that visibility quickly led to a lot of shops across the city beginning to bargain with unions. So even before these shocking crimes at Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, workers were winning unions, thanks to their own courage first and foremost, but also to the elite outrage that was created by the so-called Mink Brigade. This movement meant that after the fire, workers didn't just win unions, they also won permanent labor law, granting rights which are still enshrined to this day. Now listen, the alliance was far from perfect, was weighed down by quite a bit of classism, patronizing expectations. But ultimately, together, they did prevail. The upper class women, they got to feel good about their expensive fashion, and the workers got better hours, wages, and working conditions. When working class courage combines with upper class awareness and guilt, everything changed. That's the dangerous zone that these two companies, Amazon and Starbucks, are in right now. The visibility of working conditions and pro-union rhetoric everywhere from the New York Times to CNBC to TMZ, that makes it impossible for billionaires like Bezos and Schultz to conduct their class warfare in secret. Their ugly deeds and their brutal tactics and their outright criminality, let's be clear, are increasingly on display for all the world to see, making it harder for your average Amazon and Starbucks customer to maintain their personal feeling of virtuousness. It's no wonder the billionaires and corporate execs have hit the panic button, but there's no unseeing the shocking abuse of our corporate overlords to everyday workers. I think the fact that it's Amazon and that it's Starbucks, and these are brands that are so central. Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.